The snowflakes fell like shattered pieces of a breaking world as the little girl stood trembling on the icy sidewalk. The early morning street was quiet, except for the distant hum of cars and the cold wind slicing between the buildings. The city still slept, except for her. The man in the maroon coat froze mid-step when he saw her tiny hands gripping the iron fence. Her backpack dropped at her feet, her eyes full of fear far too heavy for a child to carry. And then, in a voice so small it could barely fight against the winter wind, she whispered the words that cracked something deep inside him. "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night." In that instant, the powerful CEO who controlled towering businesses felt powerless against a child's trembling confession. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. Yet every instinct in him screamed that he had just stepped into the middle of someone's silent tragedy. Backhand index pointing right if you believe in kindness, second chances, and helping people when they cannot help themselves. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more hearts. He knelt down in the snow, feeling it seep into his expensive shoes, but he didn't care. The girl's breath fogged in the cold as she tried to be brave, but her eyes shimmered with the weight of a night spent waiting, hopping, and being disappointed over and over again. Her clothes were thin, her cheeks red from the icy wind, and her innocence had been forced to carry fear meant for adults. He gently asked where she lived, what she knew, and all she could say was that her mother always came home before bedtime. But not last night. The thought stabbed him. What kind of night must this child have endured, alone in the dark, listening for footsteps that never came? As he listened, her words tugged at a part of him he had buried long ago, a wound carved by his own lonely childhood, abandoned by a mother lost to her own battles. Now, standing before a child who mirrored the loneliness he once carried, he felt a surge of protectiveness as fierce as the storm building around them. He took her hand, feeling how cold her fingers were, and told her they would find her mother. The snow intensified, turning the world into a blur of white and uncertainty, yet he walked with purpose. His tailored coat whipped in the wind as he shielded the girl from the icy gusts, guiding her through streets where the silence felt heavy with unanswered questions. He made calls, dozens, activating search teams, hospital checks, police reports. For the first time in years, his meetings, deals, and corporate empires meant nothing. All that mattered was this frightened child clutching his arm. At each stop, her school, her apartment building, the cafe where her mother worked, no one had seen her. It was as if the woman had vanished into the night. Every no tightened the coil of fear inside him, and the girl's hope dimmed with each unanswered lead. By afternoon, the snowstorm swallowed the city whole, blurring lights and footsteps until everything felt uncertain. The CEO carried the little girl when she grew too cold to walk, her head against his shoulder, her small body shivering. Something in him shifted, a tenderness he didn't know he still had. The more he held her, the more the image of his own childhood self appeared, longing for someone to pick him up when the world felt too heavy. He vowed silently, "She will not be alone." Not like I was. They checked shelters and searched dim alleyways lit only by flickering street lamps. Time stretched painfully. The storm raged and fear whispered its cruel possibilities, yet he refused to give up. Hours later, when night returned and the snow thickened into a blanket of white despair, he spotted a faint gold shape slumped beside a street lamp far down the road. His heart pounded. He gave the girl his coat and rushed ahead. There, half-conscious, shivering violently, was a woman, her clothes soaked, her breathing weak. She had collapsed from exhaustion and severe cold after working late and getting caught in the storm on her way home. Relief crashed over him like a wave. He called emergency services, held her upright, sheltered her from the wind, and didn't move until help arrived. The little girl ran into her mother's arms, crying so hard her small body shook. Even in her weakened state, the mother clutched her daughter as if anchoring herself back to life. The CEO felt his chest tight, not with pain but with something raw and overwhelming. He had saved them, but in a strange way, they had saved something inside him too. At the hospital, when doctors confirmed the mother would recover, the CEO sat silently in the hallway, his clothes still dusted with snow. The girl curled up beside him, leaning her head against his arm. He didn't move, afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had settled over her. When the mother awoke, her eyes filled with tears as she realized a stranger had moved mountains to make sure her daughter wasn't left alone in the world. She tried to thank him, but words fell short. He told her simply that no child deserved to wait alone in the dark, not knowing if someone would come for them. The mother cried harder, not just from fear or exhaustion, but from gratitude that humanity still existed in a world that often felt cruel. Days passed, and he made sure the little girl and her mother received support, food, warmth, and a safe place to recover. He visited often, not out of obligation, but because he found a sense of peace there he hadn't felt in years. Slowly, the walls he had built around himself began to melt. The little girl started smiling again. The mother's strength returned. Their tiny family, though fragile, glowed with hope, and he realized that he too was healing through them.